And good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Allen.
I'm Andrea Anderson. Governor Noem in Washington today testifying against a Bureau of Land Management rule on conservation and landscape health.
Donovan Miner in studio tonight, breaking down why the governor is opposing this rule. Donovan.
Brian and Andrea, Governor Noem saying the proposed rule, if adopted, could fundamentally change future management of BLM lands to the detriment of recreation, livestock grazing, and mineral extraction, among others. Noem's testimony echoes the sentiment she shared in a letter that she and 5 other governors sent to the Secretary of the Interior yesterday. Representative Johnson and Senators Thune and Rounds also penned a joint letter to the Secretary and the Director of BLM urging the withdrawal of the proposed rule. The governor argued that no one can take care of South Dakota better than South Dakotans themselves, and that the rule is merely political.
When a country controls our food supply and our energy supply, they will control us, and American freedom will be gone. We cannot allow rules like this to move forward in a way that stops productivity and it stops American independence.
A handful of governors have signed on in support of this bill. If passed, it is unlikely it'll make it past the president's desk. There are groups that are speaking out against Noem's stance and questioning the governor's motives. Parker Brown has more. Parker.
That's right, Donovan. The South Dakota Wildlife Federation disagrees with Governor Noem's stance on the new proposed land management bill. Brad Johnson, a member of the Wildlife Federation Board of Directors, and he's also the president of South Dakota Lakes and Streams Association, he says that the proposed rule will not do what she says it will. Governor Noem said in a press release before her trip to Washington, D.C., that the proposed Bureau of Land Management rule would, quote, devastate conservation and management efforts, harm wildlife, slow economic growth, and endanger public safety.
To establish something like a conservation lease, which can collect fees to go out and prioritize conservation over all other activities. BLM has no authority to be able to do what they're trying to do in this rule here today.
She's trying to tell you that this is going to interfere with livestock and mining, and it really doesn't. It puts conservation on an equal footing with those. And as a hunter, avid fisherman, I think that's a good thing.
Today, Noem boasted about how South Dakota is doing with conservation.
What's interesting to me is that South Dakota is the second largest producing state of renewable energy, that we are regularly in the top 10 of greenest states in the nation, that we are very conservation minded.
Johnson says that the state doesn't do enough.
I've been involved in conservation issues, particularly protecting South Dakota's water for more than 30 years. And I can tell you one thing, South Dakota does a terrible job at that. It's lip service is what our state does on so many conservation issues.
Johnson sees Noem's trip to Washington, D.C. as more political posturing rather than a true concern, especially since the proposed rule would affect about 0.5% of the land in South Dakota.
It would be nice to see, rather than just making it a Republican/Democrat issue, it'd be nice to see our congressional delegation and our governor really make an effort to promote conservation in a real way.
Johnson went on to say that some of the biggest conservation efforts in the state right now are combating invasive species like certain grasses and zebra mussels. He says that the state should have a heavier focus on that. Brian and Andrea.
All right, Parker, thank you.